Wade Wilson's story has turned into something darker than most people could have imagined. Not long ago, he was found inside his cell, lying lifeless, unresponsive, the victim of what looked like a fentanyl overdose. Medical staff rushed in, worked on him, and against the odds, they brought him back. For most, that would be the end of the story. He lived. He got another chance. But Wade claims that what happened wasn't an accident at all. He insists it was an organized attempt to end his life, and he swears that the same people who did it the first time are preparing to do it again. In letters that recently surfaced, handwritten by Wade himself, he gives chilling details. He writes about who was behind the attack, who is helping to cover it up, and how his eventual death will be made to look like nothing more than an accident. And according to Wade, if no one speaks up, it is only a matter of time before he is gone for good. But before we dig into the letters, let's back up. A few weeks ago, some say closer to 2 months, Wade overdosed inside Union Correctional Institution. The drug of choice? Fentanyl. Powerful, deadly, and all too common inside the prison system. Somehow, the medical team revived him. That should have been a wake-up call, a moment to reconsider his choices. Instead, it became the foundation of a new claim. After his overdose, he was temporarily moved off of death row. He was transferred to another prison, one without a death row unit, called Sanani. Compared to Union, Sanani has a reputation for being easier, calmer, and even sweet, at least by prison standards. Wade got to mingle with other inmates, enjoy a break from the isolation of death row, and experience a very different daily routine. But that small taste of freedom didn't last. After about a month, Wade was moved back to Union, back onto death row, back into the same conditions he had been trying to escape. This return hit him hard. And it was during this time that the letters began to appear. The letters, written in Wade's recognizable handwriting on prison-issued paper, are desperate, frantic, and repetitive. He names names, he begs for help, and he warns over and over that his life is in danger. He claims that prison officials themselves are orchestrating his death, using inmates as tools to do their dirty work. He insists there's a bounty on his head, and that the plan is simple. He will be killed, and his death will be staged as an accident, probably another overdose. His words echo with panic. "Tell the world," he writes. "Tell the world before it's too late." One of his closest outside supporters, a woman named Angie, has taken it upon herself to spread his warnings. She sent copies of his letters to prison administrators, creating an official record of his claims. She says Wade has been denied legal calls, cut off from his attorney, and isolated in ways that make him more vulnerable. In her emails, Angie insists that Wade's rights are being violated, that his safety is not being taken seriously, and that if something happens to him, no one should believe the official story. For Wade, every page of every letter is both a warning and a plea. He repeats the same phrase again and again, as though terrified it will be ignored. Tell the world. To him, the only way to stay alive is to make as many people as possible aware of what he believes is coming. The question is whether his fears are real or whether they are just another chapter in a long line of dramatic claims he has made in the past. After Wade's shocking claims began circulating, many people immediately questioned whether there was any truth to what he was saying. On one side, you have Wade's letters, filled with desperation, naming prison staff and describing conspiracies. On the other side, you have Wade's history, a man already known for wild accusations, manipulative behavior, and a deep relationship with drugs. To fully understand what these letters mean, you have to step back and look at the bigger picture of Wade Wilson's life behind bars. The story of Wade Wilson doesn't start with his overdose. For years, he has been viewed as one of Florida's most notorious inmates, not just because of the crimes that landed him on death row, but also because of the chaos he creates inside prison walls. Wade has a reputation. He is dramatic, unpredictable, and constantly looking for ways to manipulate the system. He has cried out for help before, making bizarre claims that never turned out to be true. At one point, Wade swore that the prison was pumping poisonous chemicals into his cell through the air vents. He told supporters that officers were slowly trying to kill him by contaminating his environment. But anyone who knows how prison ventilation works understands that such a thing is almost impossible. At best, 4 cells share a small unit, and pumping something lethal through the vents would endanger everyone, not just Wade. Nothing ever came of his claim, and yet, he continued to spread it for months. Then there's Wade's long history with drugs. By the time he landed on death row, he was already a heavy user, and he managed to continue that habit while incarcerated. Over the years, reports have come out about Wade spending donated money on smuggled substances. He has been caught before. He even convinced a woman named Bonnie Wiggins, who became one of his supporters from the outside, to try and sneak drugs into prison for him. She got caught, and unlike Wade, she is still paying the price for it today. Wade, meanwhile, continued to build a small, cult-like following of people who believe his every word. That brings us back to his overdose. When he was found unresponsive in his cell, the immediate assumption was the obvious one. Wade had gotten his hands on more drugs, used too much, and nearly died. The medical staff that saved him didn't treat him like a man who had been poisoned by conspirators. They treated him like another addict who overdosed. And here's the key question. If prison officials truly wanted him dead, why bring him back? They could have easily done nothing, let the overdose take his life, and declared it a tragic but unsurprising accident. Instead, they acted quickly and revived him. That doesn't fit the story Wade is now trying to sell, but Wade never lets a crisis go to waste. He knows that being caught with drugs puts him at risk of losing privileges, phone calls, visits, even communication with his supporters. To cover himself, he can point the finger at prison staff and claim he was targeted. Suddenly, what could have been just another overdose becomes a conspiracy, a murder attempt, a reason for his fans to rally behind him. And by framing himself as the victim, Wade tries to turn the narrative away from his own choices and onto a broader claim of corruption. This is the cycle that has defined Wade Wilson. An incident occurs, Wade spins it into a bigger story, and supporters amplify it. Each time it becomes harder to separate truth from lies. Is there a chance he really is being targeted? Possibly. After all, prison is not a safe place, especially for someone like Wade who has angered gangs like the Unforgiven by tattooing their symbols on his face without truly being part of them. But more often than not, Wade's history suggests that these plots are convenient shields for his own mistakes. And so, as his new letters make the rounds, we are left with 2 possibilities. Either Wade Wilson is a man genuinely trapped in a deadly conspiracy, begging for his life to anyone who will listen, or he is once again spinning a story, trying to turn his own self-destruction into a spectacle. The letters Wade wrote are not just emotional, they are obsessive. In almost every paragraph, he repeats the same phrase, "Tell the world." It's as if he believes that only by broadcasting his fears to as many people as possible can he protect himself from what he insists is coming. To his supporters, these letters are proof of a desperate man, trapped in a nightmare where both inmates and guards want him gone. To his critics, they are nothing more than the ramblings of a manipulator who knows exactly how to tug on people's emotions. One of the most striking things about the letters is how Wade names specific circumstances. He writes that his legal calls are being blocked, that his housing assignment places him among members of the Unforgiven gang, and that officers are quietly aiding these inmates. According to Wade, the plan is simple. If he is attacked or overdoses again, it will all be staged as an accident. He says his death will be explained away, investigations will be avoided, and the truth will be buried along with him. His closest supporter on the outside, Angie, has taken these letters very seriously. She claims she immediately contacted Wade's attorney, filed complaints with prison officials, and shared his writings online. To her, Wade is a man being silenced, a man stripped of his rights, and a man standing on the edge of a grave dug by people who are supposed to be in charge of keeping him alive. Angie insists that Wade has a right to safety, to legal counsel, and to fair treatment, regardless of the crimes that put him on death row. But the problem is credibility. Wade's credibility is damaged, not just by his past drug use, but by his pattern of making claims that turn out to be exaggerated or false. For example, when he previously said staff were poisoning him through the vents, the story spread quickly among his small circle of fans. Yet nothing ever came of it. No evidence, no proof, and no investigation that backed up his version of events. It faded away like so many of his other stories, leaving only the people who continue to believe no matter what. Still, Wade's paranoia is not completely unfounded. Prison life is dangerous, especially for someone like him. The Unforgiven gang does have influence inside Florida prisons, and they are known for punishing people who falsely claim affiliation. Wade tattooed their symbols on his body, wearing their identity without earning it. That alone could make him a target. Combine that with his reputation as a manipulator and his constant attention-seeking behavior, and it isn't hard to imagine other inmates wanting him out of the way. Whether staff would truly risk their careers and freedom to help make that happen, however, is another matter entirely. At the same time, Wade's letters reveal just how much fear he carries day to day. They aren't just accusations. They read like the writings of a man trapped in a cycle of paranoia. He repeats himself, he begs, and he returns again and again to the idea that his only chance of survival is if someone, anyone, on the outside pays attention and spreads his story. In one section, he warns that if anyone hears about an accident involving his cell, they should know the truth. It was planned. He writes that officers and inmates are working together, watching him, waiting for the right moment to strike. Whether true or not, these letters paint a picture of Wade Wilson as someone who no longer trusts anyone around him. In his eyes, every guard, every inmate, every interaction is part of a larger conspiracy. To him, death isn't just a possibility, it's a countdown. And that is exactly why these letters feel so haunting. Because even if they are only the product of fear and addiction, they reveal how completely Wade has surrendered to the idea that his end is near. For his supporters, that is reason enough to keep his words alive. To them, if Wade dies tomorrow, his letters will stand as evidence that he tried to warn. The deeper we look into Wade Wilson's story, the more it becomes a battle of perception. On one side, there are people convinced that he is a victim of a system that wants him silenced. On the other, there are just as many who believe he is simply an addict playing the same games he has always played, spinning lies to protect himself and manipulate those who still support him. And somewhere between those two extremes lies the uncomfortable truth. When you break down Wade's claims, certain details don't add up. If prison officials were truly determined to end his life, why save him after his overdose? Why rush in, work to revive him, and give him another chance to breathe? That decision alone undercuts the very foundation of his conspiracy. If anything, it suggests the opposite, that prison staff, no matter how much they might dislike him, are still obligated to follow protocol and save his life. That moment, more than any letter or accusation, shows just how fragile Wade's claims are. But Wade is smart in one way. He knows how to tell a story. His letters are designed to be dramatic. He paints himself as a man surrounded by enemies, with officers plotting against him and gangs waiting for their chance. He insists that if anything happens, people must not believe the official explanation. This constant repetition, tell the world, isn't just paranoia, it's strategy. He wants his supporters to be ready to cry foul no matter what happens. If he overdoses again, they can say it wasn't his fault. If he is attacked, they can say it was an inside job. Every outcome becomes proof of the conspiracy. In that way, Wade guarantees that the story never ends, even if his life does. The irony is that Wade's past behavior is exactly what makes it so hard to take his current warnings seriously. For years, he has thrived on manipulation. He has lied to gain favors, misled supporters to get money, and convinced people to risk their own freedom for him. His connection with Bonnie Wiggins is the perfect example. She believed in him, trusted him, and ended up in prison herself because she tried to smuggle drugs on his behalf. To this day, she remains locked up, paying the price for Wade's choices, while he continues to spin new stories. That kind of history doesn't just disappear. It follows him into every new claim he makes. And yet, there is still an undeniable danger surrounding him. Even if the staff are not involved, the possibility of violence from other inmates is real. Wade's decision to cover his face with tattoos linked to a powerful prison gang without ever being part of them is almost a death sentence in itself. Those tattoos mark him, and in the prison world, that mark doesn't fade. The unforgiven gang doesn't forgive imposters, and Wade is living proof of that. So while his letters may exaggerate the role of prison officials, the threat from other inmates is very real. This is where the debate becomes complicated. Wade's critics dismiss everything as lies, pointing to his addiction and manipulation. His supporters take every word at face value, convinced he's a target. But the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. Wade may not be the victim of a massive staff conspiracy, but that doesn't mean he isn't in danger. Death row is filled with violent men, many of whom already have nothing to lose. In that environment, a man like Wade, who thrives on attention and stirs up conflict, is bound to make enemies. In the end, the question is not whether Wade's claims are true, it's whether they matter. If he is killed, his supporters will cry out that the system silenced him. If he survives, he will continue writing, spinning, and warning of conspiracies. Either way, Wade Wilson has already won in one sense. He has made himself the center of attention, and that, perhaps more than anything else, is what he has always wanted. At the heart of Wade Wilson's story is a haunting contradiction. Here is a man who once had no problem taking lives, yet now begs for his own to be spared. His letters drip with desperation, repeating over and over that he will be killed, that it will be made to look like an accident, and that no one should believe the official story. Whether you see those words as a genuine cry for help or the manipulations of a con man, one thing is undeniable. Wade Wilson does not want to die. And maybe that is the most ironic part of all. Wade, a man on death row, was already sentenced to die. Yet even with the state preparing for his eventual execution, he insists that the greater threat is not the courtroom, not the justice system, but the prison itself. He fears the guards, the gangs, and the walls around him far more than the needle waiting in the death chamber. That fear has consumed him so completely that his letters read less like updates and more like a countdown. For his supporters, these writings have become sacred proof. They see him as a man screaming into the void, trying to alert the world before it's too late. Every denied phone call, every shift in housing, every encounter with another inmate becomes fuel for the idea that a conspiracy is tightening around him. For them, the letters are not paranoid scribbles, but the testimony of a man who knows he is marked for death. They spread his words online, share them across forums and Facebook groups, and insist that if anything happens, Wade told us in advance. For his critics, however, these letters are just the latest chapter in the same tired book. They see a manipulator recycling the same strategy he has always used. When he's caught in a bad situation, shift the blame, invent a bigger story, and make himself the victim. To them, Wade isn't a man in danger. He's a man who overdosed on drugs he willingly took, now scrambling to rewrite the story so he doesn't look weak or reckless. They remember the vent conspiracy, the endless accusations, the drug smuggling, and the lies. To them, these letters are nothing new. But perhaps the truth is not about sides at all. The truth is that Wade Wilson lives in a world where both things can be real at once. He can be manipulative, dishonest, and addicted to chaos, while also being in very real danger. He can be exaggerating, while also living under a genuine threat from the enemies he has made. Because in prison, perception matters as much as reality. If you are seen as weak, you become a target. If you are seen as arrogant, you become a target. If you claim to be something you are not, you become a target. And Wade Wilson, by all accounts, has done all three. That is why his letters hit so hard. Even if you don't believe his words, you can feel the fear dripping off the page. You can sense the isolation, the paranoia, and the knowledge that every day might be his last. Whether that fear is justified or not almost doesn't matter, because for Wade, it is real. And as long as he keeps writing, he will keep trying to make that fear real for everyone who reads his words. So where does that leave us? With a man who may be lying, may be telling the truth, or may be trapped somewhere in between. With a story that refuses to end no matter how many times he cries wolf. And with the chilling possibility that one day, whether by overdose, attack, or execution, Wade Wilson's prediction will finally come true. And when that day comes, whether you see it as justice, tragedy, or conspiracy, one thing is certain. Wade Wilson will have had the last word. Because he told us. He warned us. Again and again, in every letter, with every sentence, he begged, "Tell the world."